Welcome, everyone. I'm Barbara Podell. I'm a member of the Craft Show Committee of the Philadelphia Museum of Art Craft Show. This is our 47th craft show, which will take place from November 3rd to 5th, 2023 at the Convention Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I'm very pleased to introduce to you today Andy Koupal, a glass artist from Detroit, Michigan, who will be exhibiting at the craft show. He's an artist, a designer, and an educator. And he's here to talk to us about his work, his inspiration, and as a special treat, to show us his glass blowing studio. So Andy, welcome. And we're so happy that you will be exhibiting at the show. And thank you for coming today to talk to us.
Yeah,
so
thanks
first,
so much.
Let's get to know you. Tell us about yourself and your background and how you came to be interested in glass art.
Yeah, well, hi there, and thanks so much for having me. And I'm really looking forward to exhibiting at the show for the first time. Yeah, my name is Andy Koupal. I've been blowing glass for about 18 years. And I was first interested in glass way back just as a kid. My grandma had kind of a small collection of glass objects around her house, and I was always sort of fascinated with them, and especially this one particular ashtray that she had that had bubbles entrapped in it. As a kid, I was always like really fascinated with, how they trap the bubbles and the processes. And as I sort of got older, I was introduced to a program through the public school system in Michigan, where you could use some scholarship money from some standardized tests to take classes. And I used a little bit of that money to go take a class at the College for Creative Studies as like an intro sort of program to sort of some art practices. And one of the sample sessions was like a glass blowing class. And I kind of just got the bug, like a lot of glass blowers do. They get their hands on the material for the first time and just kind of fall in love with it. And that sort of led me to go to RIT, Rochester Institute of Technology in Western New York. I showed up sort of undeclared. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to take, a glass class, but also was interested in industrial design, and got right into the program of glass and just couldn't stop, just like a lot of other artists, And yeah, after that, I got out of school, and it was right around 2008, 2009, and the economy, wasn't in the best shape, and there were a whole lot of jobs available. So I moved back home to Michigan. I grew up in the suburbs of Detroit, and where my shop is right now. And I was just picking up odd jobs all over, trying to work in any local studio that I could. And some of the jobs that were available at the time were just production glass making jobs. And so a lot of just like reproduction and just doing the same thing in repetition, like pumpkins and cups and all that sort of work. And I kind of fell in love with that method of making, though, because for me, it was just a way of learning the craft. I knew I had some ideas in my head, and I wasn't really technically there to sort of get them out in the open. And so, like, for me, that channel of like making in a production sense and being underneath the tutelage of other artists and makers, which is a good path for me, and led me to get a full-time job at Simon Pierce in Vermont, where I worked, I think, roughly from 2010 to 2012. And then a job opened up at the Henry Ford Museum back home in Dearborn. And so I moved back home and worked there for about 10 or 11 years. And I ran the shop there for the last 4 years, up until about 2021. And then I opened up my own shop, which we're in right now.
Great. Thank you. So can you explain to us your process of making a work of glass art, and perhaps show us a little bit of your studio? And I see you have some of your pieces sitting right there, so you might want to that might help you explain your process.
Yeah, absolutely. I work in a very traditional sense of glass making, of just free blown handmade glass. I learned from a lot of people who were inspired by, like the Venetian style of glass making, and also like at Simon Pierce and some of my other like major kind of more factory experiences, sort of more of that Northern European and sort of American model of like mold blowing. and just that repetitive work that I was talking about. And so, yeah, I mean, my process basically begins in the studio, which I'll show you here in a minute. I have like a large 200-pound glass furnace that runs at 2100 degrees Fahrenheit, and it has a big pool of molten glass in there. And so, just like everyone's seen on TV or Blown Away, all the shows that are out there, I just use a stainless steel blowpipe and gather the glass on there and blow through it and use all those processes to sort of, make my work. And I kind of have two different realms of work that I work in. I mean, I have my more sculptural ends, kind of one-off work, and I also have my own sort of design product line. And so right now, I mean, the bread and butter of how I make my living is still kind of entrenched in that design production-based work. And so on top of doing these cool shows like the PMA show, I mean, I'm going out to New York City for like Shop Object and New York Now and shows like that, and selling wholesale to designers and businesses as well. And so, I mean, the industrial impressions that you see right next to me are sort of just like a riff off of like the cultural landscapes of the industrial Midwest and the East Coast. And they're the smokestacks done in sort of these mid-century sort of colorful patterns. And it's a body of work I've only been making for about 2 years. And so you're always like experimenting with size and scale. And then past that, I mean, I have two of my astral vessels, which is more of my like designy based work. And I make these in 8 or 9 different colors and different shapes and styles, but I try to keep them all within sort of like a regimented form and scale.
Mm-hmm. And did I see on your website that those were inspired by the space lunar modules of the 50s and 60s? Is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, like a lot of people, I mean, I just, I just love that mid-century modern feel, and I've always been fascinated with the era, I think. And yeah, as a kid, I had these books. There were like really nice illustrations that were put out by NASA, I think, in like the late '60s or '70s, and I had them around, I think, for my mom. And there were these great illustrations of like the capsule to return modules coming back from like the Apollo missions and coming through Earth's atmosphere, and all the friction and things like that, and then landing. And it's just a really cool shape. And sort of I've been kind of riffing off that shape, and it's been sort of popular for me. And it's just another great thing to sort of experiment with and push it as far as I can. And so there'll be some of that like space themed work at the show with me too at the PMA.
Oh, that's great. And do you have any ideas or preferences about color? How do you choose colors for particular themes in your work?
Yeah, I mean, so for most of my work, I mean, I'm always sort of thinking about them in sets. A lot of the work I'm creating to be in sets of like 2 to 3 or more. And I love that because you can play off color, like you have the complementary colors right next to me right here. And also I just love it in the sense of like people, making the work approachable for people to like pair in their homes. I think from like a visual standpoint and a design standpoint, it's fun, but also just, from a business standpoint of just being able to offer colors and shapes and in arrangements, and so I can, instead of selling one piece, maybe people want to, bring 2 or 3 to their house, or maybe think about it in the future. If someone collects one piece from me one year, maybe down the line they can add to it with another set. And so I like to just, think about them in, yeah, just in collections basically. And so
Mhm.
I sort of like, form my color schemes off of that approach.
Yeah. And what about size? I see you have some objects sitting on a tabletop. Do you make much larger objects? Are they special projects, or what do you do with the size of objects?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to work in a range with my wholesale and my production line that's number one, easy to ship and easy to transport, and keeps it in a price point. I think that works for me and my clients, my buyers. But for my one-off pieces, I mean, the sky's the limit for scale. So I think I'm the PMA. I'll be bringing some much larger forms with me.
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah. But I mean, glass blowing is, I mean, it's very physically exertive, right? So the bigger the piece, the more you're going to work. And when I'm in the shop and designing a piece, I'm also thinking about myself and the people I work with, and trying to keep it in a manageable sense where we're not wearing each other out or myself out, and I can keep working through the week and keep going as long as I
Sure,
can.
sure.
Yeah.
And you have a glass shop, and I think some of our listeners, and I know I'm not familiar with the process, but how many assistants do you have, and basically what functions does everybody perform?
Yeah, so in my shop, I share it with my friend and colleague. His name is Matt Kolbrenner, and he bought the building that we're in back in 2018, and it was basically a shell, 1,200 square foot building, and so it's just basically me and him trading time and helping each other out. So
Mhm.
usually with the scale of the shop, which you'll see in a minute here, I really only have room for one or two assistants, and for most of my beginning of my career, I was working in shops with a lot of people. And so you could, basically someone would start the piece off, hand it to the next person, hand it to the next person. And it was an awesome way of working. I really enjoyed the camaraderie and, the fun in the shop and things like that. But now after, I think the first 15 years of my career, I've sort of scaled it down. It's just a little easier for me right now to work like that. Um, but yeah, it's just basically me and Matt in here, and we've got a great dynamic right now with us just trading time. Yeah.
Great, great. Well, Andy, if you would be kind enough to show us a little bit of your studio, we would be thrilled to
Yeah,
see it.
absolutely. So I'll kind of just turn the camera around and just let me know if it's fading out or whatever. So right now we're in the
Okay.
metal making shop, and there's the bathroom.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna go ahead and just open this door up over here, and then it's where my hot shop is, and I'll take it with you, take the
Okay.
computer with me. Yeah, so just walk through the metal shop here.
Okay. Looks great.
Okay, perfect. And here are some annealing ovens on this side wall right here that we built. We fabricated these all ourselves. And I'll kind of turn the camera. We've got a nice big opening. You get some nice air. And here's the furnace and the reheating chamber right here. And so I'll kind of place the computer on the marver here, and I'll open up the furnace for everyone to see. Be kind of cool, I think. So again, this is that pot I was talking about. It's the furnace that holds 200 pounds of molten glass on the inside of there. And actually, you know what? This is kind of funny. I charged the other day. The door is kind of stuck right now. It's a big break from the seat. Sometimes you need the crowbar to open it up.
Okay.
So I'll just go ahead and
Yeah, go ahead. This is an adventure.
there it is.
Oh, wow.
It's easy. Yeah.
And
There's the furnace.
that's a piece in there, or that's a big chunk of glass in there. We can't
So inside,
see it.
yeah, I'll bring it a little closer. I'll have to get close enough so my computer doesn't get torched, but you can kind of
Yeah,
see there's an
sure.
opening right there, and inside
Yeah,
of there it's a big pool of molten glass. There's a big pot that holds it. So I'll go ahead and I'll gather a little bit of glass for people to see.
yeah.
Uh, so yeah, this is the process of gathering. I just have a stainless steel iron in my hand right now, and I'm basically just have the tip of this iron in the pot of molten glass, and I'm spinning and gathering the glass up. And this is basically how every piece starts. And
Oh,
right now it's 2,000 degrees. When I stop turning, it just wants to fall right down to the ground.
yeah.
And
Wow.
yeah, and then we go ahead and shape it using tools like wooden blocks and stainless steel tabletops and tools basically that haven't changed since like the Roman times. And I'll show you some of the tool wall right here, and this tool right here called the jacks.
Mm,
I mean, this is like a Roman design beforehand. And they use these like really simple stainless steel tools to sort of like form and ride the side of the top of the glass and things like that
mm.
to shape it. And then also show you guys too, we'll kind of get you another view. So that's where I was. And I was talking to you earlier. This is the metal shop right here. There's the pieces you can see. And if we round the corner, we have like a little office. Go ahead and wave to Matt. I think he's in there right now. There he is. You can see him. And then we have the cold shop right here. And this is basically, we had the hot shop before where all the hot processes take place. And then we have the cold shop here. And this is where all the sort of the cutting and grinding and polishing of glass takes place. And so for some of my pieces, there's a lot of carving that takes place after the fact, after they're blown. So you form the glass and you put it in those annealing ovens that I showed you, and then take them out, and you can basically inscribe in the glass different patterns and things like that. And so the tools that we have in here are really similar to like what you see in a wood shop, except that they're all water fed. And so like we use like industrial grade diamond pads and things like that to sort of grind and polish the glass down.
And how many pieces can you make at a time in the ovens?
It depends on the size and scale. So like for some of my production work, you know, for the smaller items, I could fit up to maybe 50 of them in the
Oh.
oven. And that's if you're working like a really fast pace, you know.
Mm.
Now for my bigger pieces, it's going to take more time and things like that. So for instance, I'll be making some of those astral vessels after this. And in a half day session, I mean, I work about maybe 3 to 4 hours before I split the rest of the day with Matt, who works in the afternoon. I think I can get probably 6 or 7, up to 8 maybe in that time,
Mm.
depending on how fast I'm moving and
Yeah.
making sure everything works well. You know, I mean, even though I've been doing this about 18 years, I mean, it's still a very complicated medium. It's still very challenging, and so sometimes you know things can go awry, and you just gotta you know correct your mistakes as you're working and move on.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, this is really fascinating. Your work is beautiful.
Thank you.
Anything in the works for the future? Any new inspirations or new projects coming up?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to keep riffing on the idea of those architectural forms for the smokestacks, and so I'm hoping to bring some pieces to PMA. We'll see if I get them done in time, but they're based off of like billboard signage, like old
Oh,
school billboard signage and signage you might see just on like old supermarkets or bodegas and things like that, and starting to implement sort of text in my work as well, and sort of kind of pushing the envelope that way.
that's fantastic. Well, I'm going to be watching your website, and I hope some of those pieces make it to Philadelphia in November.
Yeah, me
Andy, it
too.
was such a pleasure to meet you and
Yeah, you
to hear
too.
about your work and see your studio. Um, we look forward to meeting you in person and seeing your work at the Philadelphia Museum of Art Craft Show, November 3rd to 5th, 2023, at the Convention Center here in Philadelphia. So, Andy, you get to sign off. You say the last words.
Well, great. Well, thanks again for having me. This has been a great experience, and I love Philadelphia. I've been there a couple times for some wholesale shows, and I'm really excited for coming back and enjoying just the culture and what Philadelphia brings, and meeting all you guys at the show.
Thank you. Thank you. See you in November, Andy.
All
Take
right,
care.
sounds good. Yeah, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.